The untold story of Gaddafi's elite female bodyguards. Power, loyalty, and mystery. Gaddafi's female Amazonian guard. In the heart of the Libyan desert, surrounded by opulent palaces and fortified by strict security, lived a man whose life embodied both charm and terror. This was Muammar Gaddafi, the leader who ruled Libya for over 4 decades. Known for his wealth, power, and eccentricities, Gaddafi also held a secretive fascination with loyalty and control, especially evident in his choice of personal bodyguards. This was no ordinary security force. They were an elite squad of female bodyguards, fiercely loyal, rigorously trained, and utterly devoted. Who was Muammar Gaddafi? Muammar Gaddafi came to power in 1969 after overthrowing King Idris I in a coup that stunned the world. Gaddafi quickly established himself as a leader who was both revolutionary and oppressive, ruling Libya for 42 years. During his reign, he amassed vast wealth, estimated at over $200 billion at its peak, stashed across international banks, investments, and luxurious properties in Europe. His lifestyle was lavish, extravagant, and filled with symbols of power. But beyond his wealth and political stature, Gaddafi was known for his enigmatic personality and controversial decisions, one of which was the creation of his Amazonian Guard, an all-female force trained to protect him with their lives. The birth of the Amazonian Guard. Why female bodyguards? Gaddafi's decision to form an elite unit of female bodyguards came in the 1980s, a time when he was consolidating his power and wanted to make a statement to the world. By surrounding himself with female protectors, Gaddafi aimed to promote an image of progressive values, especially in a country where women traditionally had limited roles outside the home. He declared that women were just as capable as men in combat, and his use of female guards became a symbol of his vision for Libya's modernity. Yet, many believe his reasons went beyond the political statement. Gaddafi reportedly believed that women were more trustworthy than men, more devoted, and, crucially, less likely to betray him. There was also a belief that assassins would hesitate before attacking women, making them a tactical advantage. Gaddafi's choice of female guards seemed to blend his fascination with power and a certain reverence for the feminine, though ultimately, these women became tools of his control. Selection and training of the guards. The selection process for the Amazonian Guard was rigorous and demanding. Recruits had to meet several criteria. They had to be physically fit, attractive by Gaddafi's standards, and, according to some reports, virgins. The emphasis on virginity was said to symbolize their purity and total dedication to Gaddafi. Each guard was required to take an oath of celibacy, pledging loyalty only to Gaddafi. However, disturbing testimonies that surfaced after Gaddafi's death painted a different picture, with many guards revealing that they were victims of manipulation and abuse. Once selected, the women underwent intensive military training, learning everything from hand-to-hand combat and weapons handling to advanced security techniques. They trained in the use of firearms, defensive driving, and hand-to-hand combat, often practicing in conditions that simulated real-life assassination attempts. Some even trained as snipers, ready to eliminate any perceived threat at a moment's notice. The training was meant to create bodyguards who could protect and intimidate. Physically, the guards were chosen for their athleticism and discipline, while exact specifications were never confirmed. They were often described as tall and well-built, with an emphasis on strength and agility. Gaddafi wanted a team that was not only lethal but visually imposing, ensuring they could act as both protectors and symbols of his control. Where did the guards live? The female guards lived in private residences provided by Gaddafi, typically within his various compounds around Tripoli or Sirte. Living quarters were luxurious compared to Libyan standards, but they were under strict surveillance and rarely left the compound. Guards were discouraged, if not outright forbidden, from maintaining personal relationships or marrying. They had minimal contact with family and were required to be on call 24/7. This seclusion and lack of personal freedom meant that, over time, these women became isolated, their lives revolving solely around Gaddafi's protection and demands. The Amazonian guards were effectively cut off from their former lives, a strategy that Gaddafi used to ensure their loyalty, by removing them from their families and keeping them isolated in his compounds. Gaddafi maintained a grip on their loyalty and obedience. They operated almost as prisoners within the luxury provided to them, with little connection to the outside world and few choices about their future. Their role beyond Libya. Did they travel abroad? Gaddafi's female guards were not only tasked with protecting him within Libya, they also traveled internationally with him on state visits and diplomatic trips. These travels brought a new level of attention to Gaddafi and his guards. His Amazonian guard became an iconic feature of his public appearances abroad, often donning their striking uniforms and accompanying him in formal settings. The spectacle of these women, tall and armed, surrounding Gaddafi, was a testament to his wealth and power, as well as a bold political statement. Internationally, the Amazonian guards attracted fascination and intrigue, with many foreign dignitaries and media outlets noting their presence. Their strict discipline and strong physical appearance became an emblem of Gaddafi's unique style of leadership and control. Did Gaddafi exploit his female guards? While the Amazonian guards were presented to the public as dedicated protectors, rumors persisted that Gaddafi used his female guards for personal gratification. Many of the guards who survived the fall of his regime later spoke out, revealing disturbing details about life under Gaddafi. According to their testimonies, the dictator routinely abused his power, subjecting many of them to sexual exploitation. Guards reported being summoned to his private quarters under the guise of loyalty, only to be mistreated and forced into silence. Gaddafi's treatment of his guards shattered the image of the Amazonian Guard as a symbol of progressive values, revealing the darker truths of his reign. How many female guards did Gaddafi have? Over the years, the exact number of guards fluctuated. At any given time, around 30 to 40 women served in the Amazonian Guard. However, many more were likely recruited, trained, and cycled through, particularly as some left the service due to injury, burnout, or the hidden abuses that occurred behind closed doors. These women were chosen and groomed to project an image of loyalty, but their lives were far from glamorous, often filled with immense sacrifice and fear. Salaries, benefits, and lifestyle. Gaddafi's female guards received salaries that were high by Libyan standards, with additional benefits including access to luxurious accommodations, designer clothing, and exclusive privileges within his compounds. Yet, these perks came with a price. They had no personal freedoms, minimal contact with family, and were forced to live in constant vigilance. Their loyalty was rewarded materially but at the cost of independence and, in many cases, dignity. Why no male guards? Gaddafi's preference for female guards was both a political and strategic choice. He saw them as a powerful symbol of his claimed commitment to women's rights, and it created a memorable, media-friendly image. Additionally, Gaddafi felt that women were less likely to betray him, believing that their loyalty and devotion would be unshakable. Female guards also added an element of surprise to his security, as it was believed that potential assassins would hesitate before attacking women, giving the guards a tactical advantage. Where are they now? Following Gaddafi's overthrow and death in 2011, the fate of his female guards was complex and often tragic. Many fled the country, while others faced persecution or were detained by rebel forces who viewed them as symbols of the fallen regime. The few who managed to escape or were released faced challenges reintegrating into society, as they were often ostracized and viewed with suspicion. Some returned to their families, while others went into hiding, carrying with them the psychological scars of their time in Gaddafi's service. Gaddafi's son and the guards. Today, Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, remains a figure of interest. though his own future is uncertain. Saif once enjoyed the privileges of his father's wealth and influence. But after his father's death, his status and power dwindled. Although he has shown interest in returning to a political role in Libya, he has no known connection to the former female guards. Many of the Amazonian Guard members who survived have moved on, severing all ties to the family after Gaddafi's death. Muammar Gaddafi was one of the wealthiest rulers of his time, amassing an estimated $200 billion by the time of his death in 2011. This staggering wealth came from a combination of Libya's vast oil reserves and Gaddafi's extensive control over the country's resources. Libya's oil industry, which was nationalized under Gaddafi's regime, accounted for most of the nation's, and thus Gaddafi's, revenue. Libya is home to Africa's largest oil reserves, and the dictator funneled profits from oil sales into personal and government funds, consolidating much of it for his own use. The wealth was stored in a combination of foreign bank accounts, real estate, investments, and luxurious assets across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. How Gaddafi built his wealth. Oil revenues. Libya's vast oil reserves became the backbone of Gaddafi's wealth. After coming to power in 1969, he quickly nationalized the oil industry, taking control from foreign companies and establishing state-owned entities. Gaddafi used oil revenue not only to enrich himself but to exert influence across Africa and the Middle East, supporting rebel movements and projects to expand his regional influence. International investments. Through Libya's Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Libyan Investment Authority, LIA, Gaddafi invested billions globally. The LIA held stakes in major companies worldwide, including prominent shares in Italian companies like Unicredit, Fiat, and Eni. Gaddafi's government also held stakes in British and American companies, as well as properties across the world. Gold and cash reserves. Gaddafi reportedly kept large reserves of gold and cash within Libya. Estimates suggested that Gaddafi maintained a personal stockpile of gold, worth billions, stored in secret locations. These reserves were intended as a fallback if the regime faced financial difficulties or economic sanctions. Real estate. Gaddafi invested heavily in real estate, owning luxury properties across Europe, especially in London, as well as in countries like Italy, France, and Spain. He also had lavish properties within Libya, including his famous Bab al-Azizia compound in Tripoli, private stash in foreign banks. According to investigative reports, a significant portion of Gaddafi's wealth was stashed in private accounts and vaults across Europe and the Middle East, especially in banks in Switzerland, South Africa, and the United Arab Emirates. What happened to Gaddafi's wealth? After Gaddafi's death in 2011, much of his wealth was frozen or confiscated by foreign governments and the new Libyan authorities. Assets worth billions were frozen by the United Nations, the United States, the European Union, and several other countries. This included bank accounts, investments, and properties. Inheritance. What remains for his son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi? Gaddafi's wealth remains a controversial topic in Libya. While some assets were seized by the Libyan government or foreign entities, a significant amount of his wealth is still unaccounted for. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, Gaddafi's most prominent son, is believed to have access to a fraction of the wealth, although exact figures are unknown. Saif was a central figure in his father's regime, managing substantial finances and investments abroad, which has kept him under international scrutiny even after his father's death. Today, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi lives under restricted conditions in Libya but remains a symbol of the Gaddafi legacy. Some reports suggest he may still have access to hidden funds, though much of his family's wealth is either inaccessible or under legal disputes. While Saif has been politically inactive in recent years, he occasionally signals his interest in Libya's future, potentially hoping to regain power or influence. However, his financial resources are uncertain, and he likely has only a fraction of the wealth that his father once controlled. The story of Gaddafi's Amazonian Guard is one of paradoxes, loyalty and betrayal, empowerment and exploitation, honor and horror. These women were symbols of a dictator's complex vision, trained to protect him but ultimately becoming victims of his tyranny. Their stories illuminate the human cost of power and the way Gaddafi used loyalty and isolation to bind those around him to his will. The Amazonian Guard remains a dark chapter in the history of Libya, a symbol of both the allure and dangers of life under an autocratic ruler.